This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
This is June 22nd, and I'm making this video because yesterday, just down the street, half a block across from the junior high school, I went to the library because I don't have internet until next Monday in my home. They have free internet in the library. There was a table set up with a large sign celebrating Homosexual Month in America, as Obama set up with homosexual colors on the Capitol. And the background here that got my attention so much was the junior high school right across the street had a lesbian principal who advocated lesbian tolerance, and my neighbor's girl was going to the junior high school, and when they saw girls during their free time making out with each other on the front lawn, they removed their daughter and put her in St. John's Catholic School. I am not anti-homosexual. I worked with many in the Unitarian Universalist Church. I lived next door in the assistant minister's quarters and was chairman of adult education. I used to, for Charlie, the caretaker, when he was away, I would have the keys to let different groups into the church quarters for their meetings and celebrations. And the Unitarian Universalist Church was a well-known place that welcomed homosexuals. So there were lesbian and gay groups that would come and rent the hall, and I would have to open it up for them and then go after and lock it up. The thing I remember about that was the gay celebrations were quite neat and not much to pick up afterwards. The lesbian celebrations were a mess, and we usually had a problem having to get a plumber because they would put their menstrual cloths in the toilet and it would plug up the sewer. Actually, I had a large experience earlier than that. When I came out of the military, I got married, and my wife divorced me and took my children. I had completed a degree in mathematical physics and been accepted and was teaching physics, but had to get a master's degree in education for permanent certification. I was going to a local restaurant. After my divorce, I would go there in the evening and work. And I made friends with a bunch of people. Found out that AA had a lot of nice fellowship, the Alcoholics Anonymous. They'd come into that restaurant after their meetings. And one of the ladies, who was not an alcoholic, but it was part of that group from when she had got her former husband to join, he was an alcoholic, Mabel White, we got to be very close friends. Mabel had a horrendous story to tell. Her first husband, she had been a nurse in the Second World War. And when she returned, they didn't have telephones at that time. She returned home and came to her Buffalo apartment, opened the door, went in, and here was her husband in bed with her sister, and she was furious. They called the police because she was so furious. And she was furious with the police, so they took her to the Buffalo Psychiatric Clinic. And she was furious about being locked up. So they gave her a bunch of shock treatments. She was part of the movement for human rights and against psychiatric abuse. And I was at her funeral, what do you call it, one of the pallbearers. And I spoke at her funeral. She was like a sister. But her story had much depth to it. And she had worked for human rights and against psychiatric abuse. And at that time, homosexuality was a mental illness on the medical list of illnesses. So in the movement for human rights and against psychiatric abuse, the international coalition that she had joined, there were many homosexuals. And she had many homosexual friends and much awareness. And this was before any of the propaganda nonsense, but it was well known within the community, especially the gays. There was a tremendous problem with promiscuity and violence. And with the lesbian community, there was a lesbian bar near the Unitarian Church. But in general, the impression I had there was two types of lesbians, the one that were in the female role and then the bossy, dominating ones in a male role. But that's this background. But as chairman of adult education at the Unitarian Universalist Church, I sponsored a Needs of Children seminar that had university professors and the Erie County Public Health Commissioner and so forth. Very good background, and I want to share that with you because Bruno Schuttkecker, the psychiatrist, had wonderful insights into these things. And the foundation, of course, any of the insights need investigated for the substance rather than just accepting them. That the outline that I'm giving is not to indoctrinate you, but to help you guide your investigation into reality. All right. Three important things about Obama and Russia. First of all, the time that I mentioned in the early 70s, when I met Mabel White, I was completing a master's degree in education. I was a physics teacher. And I took a course in Russian education, and I expected that they were brutal somehow. I've been given so much negative propaganda in seventh grade. The teacher told us how bad communism was, and of course we had the bomb scare type of practice sessions where you'd hide under your desk because the Russians were going to bomb you. But here I took this course at the university on, and I had to do a paper, an independent paper. I did it on Russian education, and I was shocked and dismayed. The communists valued the children as the next generation. I have had residence in Russia for 20 years now, and to see the beautiful playgrounds with merry-go-rounds and teeter-totters, and it's just wonderful where we raise our granddaughter. There's a soccer field in this playground, 2 merry-go-rounds, a playhouse, a teeter-totter, seesaw. At any rate, a couple seesaws. And wonderful fellowship, how important fellowship is for social and human development. But wonderful we have this for our granddaughter that we've largely raised. She's 8 now. But I was surprised. They valued children. But there was good schools, good respect and pay for teachers. But there was a problem. One of the planks of communism, of course, communism was a class struggle, the haves against the have-nots. And one of the planks of communism was by Engels was that marriage was an invention of the have males, that they would have an heir to pass on their wealth and power to. It didn't need to respect marriage. Divorce was trivial and still is. You have to wait a month and then it's final. No problem. But this plank about marriage and women's liberation was a big part of the communist revolution. So they had, for example, my wife, when her daughter was born in communist communist Georgia. She was born in communist Armenia. But they kept her daughter away from her for a week because she needed to rest. The women's liberation, and the women she had to get a job by the police coming to the home, and she wanted to get registration and move back to Russia from Georgia. At any rate, women's liberation was a big part, and the children were raised in early daycare. They didn't understand the negative effects, and all you have to do to understand Ceausescu in communist Romania had a problem. Nobody wanted babies, so he made a law, no abortion and no contraception. The government can raise the children, and with the overthrow of the communist government, the orphanages were filled with kids banging their heads against the wall or just sitting there going like this, and many of them that never developed further. There's been a lot of cover-up of the reality here of the effect on not having a maternal nursing bond. And the other thing, what fundamental here, this is reality. There was an experiment, I think it was in the late 80s, where they took, I believe it was cats. They took some mammalian animals and covered their eyes at birth. Different groups had the blinders taken off at different times. And they found at some point, no matter how much stimulation, there was no development in the visual cortex. And that led to the insight that nerve growth factor is present at certain parts of the brain at certain times. And the stimulation needs to be there. You have the same number of brain cells, but how many interconnections you have, the synaptic network, depends on the stimulation. A little fiber goes out, and if there's no stimulation in that area, the fiber goes away, and nerve growth factor goes away, and the brain doesn't develop in that area. There's autism for you, but can't say that. It's not politically correct. But let's go on. I said about Russian education. Well, and the daycare. And Russia has a terrible problem. In the 1990s, they had more abortions than live births. And they started to try and rebuild the family. Mothers in the home, and it's working. 20 years ago, when I first went to Russia, there were men bloody at the bus stop, drunk and falling on their heads or beaten up by somebody. It was common. And you go into the park, and here were women sitting there drinking their babies, crying, and drugs. That's all gone now. The park is wonderful to go through. The only trouble is the women have these cell phones all the time, but that's another. But many, and fathers too, and you see them carrying their babies. Still, you have them in the ones that put them in baby carriage so they don't have to carry them and cover them up so they can't see anything. Where's the visual stimulation? It's a crime to deprive the children like that. But at any rate, let me get my bearings here on Russia. Russia trying to rebuild the family, and they have incentives for having children and encouraging motherhood and fatherhood and marriage and home. And it's working. The change I've seen in my community in Russia in 20 years is fantastic. Of course, they locked a lot of people up for drugs. I have a relative that spent 3 months in jail because she bought drugs and got caught at it. But and no more drug dealing in the park, and it's all gone. The police, for a couple of years we had regular police patrols. Now they don't need them. It's cleaned up. At any rate, let's go back to why Obama overthrew the elected government in Ukraine. Obama is bisexual or homosexual. But that's a fact. You can look it up. But he had a homosexual agenda along with what human rights, international human rights today, going back to Russia, when they threw out a bunch of human rights organizations and said they were representatives of foreign governments, I was disgusted with Russia. How did they do that? It turns out that these human rights today means legalized sodomy, legalized homosexual marriage, legalized abortion, and open propagandizing of homosexuality. So they were organizing homosexual gay pride parades and organizing this agenda for homosexual rights and teaching homosexuality in the public schools. And Russia's trying to rebuild the family. So they made a law that it's illegal to propagandize homosexuality in front of children. Now, without a strong foundation, homosexuality is an epidemic in Russia. They're not attacking homosexuals. What you do is your business, but don't propagandize it to children. All right. So along comes Obama, and he's celebrating homosexuality and making naming authority figures, homosexual authority figures all over. And he had all these sports figures come out and lit up the White House in homosexual colors, and had these sports people all come out public. And he was going to go with them to the 1914 Sochi Winter Olympics in Russia and going to have a gay pride parade, national, international celebration of homosexuality. But Russia wouldn't let them have the parade. So he refused to go. He sent a homosexual representation from the United States. That wasn't a problem, but they couldn't have a parade. But he refused to go. But that's when they plotted the overthrow of the Ukrainian government, because Ukraine is split between the neo-Nazis and from historically invaders of Russia and the remaining Russian part and Russian-speaking part. But he supported the Western-leaning part of Ukraine to overthrow the government, and they've been killing children and whatever. It's a crime, and the people can't get their retirement, nothing, because they're Russian-speaking, and they always have been. There's more about that later. All right. So that's how Obama and the homosexual international. It's a coalition, and please understand, this coalition is not particularly open about their agenda. It's subterfuge to plan how to bring this about and have their agenda empowered. But they ran into trouble with Russia, and they can't have their gay pride parades, and they can't teach homosexuality in the grade school the way they're doing here. At any rate, that's the background to get started here. When I talk about the abortion rights and homosexual rights community internationally using subterfuge, that's true. They have largely taken over the international human rights organizations. Something like 10 years ago, an NGO associated with the United Nations was able to get a Canadian legislator to put forward a bill banning the Bible because of hate speech. It didn't pass, but that was the anti-religious plank of human rights today. Obama plays like friends with the Muslims. That's subterfuge. His homosexuality would cause him to be killed in many Muslim countries, and he knows it. But how do you destroy the enemy? Well, you take and play Sunni against Shia. You Christian Russia against Turkey, Christian Russia against Arabia, Christian against Muslim, and Sunni against Shiite. Turkmen, Muslims against Arabic Muslims, and the Persian, Iranian Muslims against the Arab. Play them all against each other, and then human rights and women's rights. Make to pick out women and make them human rights awards from the Swedish Foundation there. Pick some girl that suffered because she was under Islam, and they're using women's rights to abortion, but women's rights in Islam to fight Islam, and homosexual rights. But they have to do it with subterfuge. If they're open, they will get destroyed. That is the international human rights agenda of today. I don't mean there aren't good people that are just humanitarian and not interested in homosexuality, that your sex and your interest in sexuality is your private business. You want to go play games with the same sex or with animals or whatever. Most people just don't want to know about your personal business. And that's the way it was when I grew up. Your personal life was personal. You didn't have to demonstrate that you were having sex with your wife and propagandizing that. That was your business. And a lot of this agenda is just a shame. There are people, and I've worked with them, that are homosexuals, that that's their preference and that's their business. And put that aside. You can work together with them, and they're good people. That's their business. And they don't propagandize to me, and I don't propagandize to them. But that's a whole nother thing. With the wars that we're in, now there's another big player in this, and that's Israel. And Israel is using the United States, and now they're playing together with the Saudi royalty, because the Saudi royalty is corrupted in Islam. The fundamentalists are turning against the Saudi royalty that the British Empire put into power, basically. But so they're playing one against the other. Now, Saudi royalty, you have a conflict between the Shiites and the Sunni against Iran, and America is being played against Iran. Well, Russia has a problem with Sunnis going to be a majority. They got a birthing policy. And they made friends with the Shia Muslims of Iran, uh, working together because their enemy is the Sunnis. If you look at Pakistan, there's been over 100 Shia mosques blown up by Sunni Muslims. The and Turkey trying to bring about the Turkish Caliphate again. There's one that here these international game players are playing one against the other to destroy both, so that in the rubbish you can arise with a homosexual and abortion agenda. Obama went with that agenda to Africa and they threw eggs at him. They had to have special vetting of the audiences because they had so much contempt for his. In Nigeria, the Catholic bishop said how Representative Obama said, we will not help you, those couple hundred girls that were taken by the Muslim group there in Nigeria. Obama said, we wouldn't help unless you do away with your sodomy law against sodomy. So that's an international agenda. And Obama, his own brother and family, he didn't go to his family, they rejected him because they don't go along with his homosexual pride. That's his business, but to propagandize it, that's not necessary. At any rate, let's get on with it. That's how Russia is being played against America. And the Obama minions in office all over are using this. And the coalition between Saudi Arabian royalty and Israel against Syria and against Iran, they're pulling in Trump as part of the Israeli agenda, Israeli and Saudi royalty agenda against Syria, which is supported by Iran, and Hezbollah, supported by Iran, and Russia in coalition respecting the sovereignty of Syria. But that's a whole another thing, one playing against the other. It's a crime, the subterfuge going on, and the propaganda garbage. To listen to the international news, yes, Russia is reporting the bad things, and you find that in the European Union. They're not, since Trump took over, they don't set no good news about America. It's all Russia, Russia, Russia. And the European International Court just came out with a judgment against Russia for more sanctions because of their homosexual parade ban. And believe me, these restrictions are helping Russia. They're building the Russian foundation that was destroyed by communism. The ones that are being hurt are those French farmers who used to sell their chickens to Russia. And now Russia's bringing back the Russian Amish from South America, giving them free farmland in Siberia. Yes, they did take a stand against that one Christian cult that rewrote the Bible. Not seventh. Oh, I don't, maybe it's seventh. I don't think it's Seventh-day Adventist. I can't remember which. They're still there. They've been banned as a cult. Uh, but if you look into it, is it Seventh-day Adventists? We get them here knocking on the door. Jehovah's Witnesses, not Seventh-day Adventists. Jehovah's Witnesses have been banned in Russia. Their founder rewrote the Bible, and if you read, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That's all changed in their Bible. At any rate, we have home Christian and home meetings, and when I had Muslim threats because of the things I published against Islam, some Muslims were hanging around the next door into our apartment building. We called the police, and they come and checked it out. They know we have a meeting with. For 10 years, I taught spoken English using the English-Russian Bible. I'm too old to learn Russian. But in the children's library, I taught English in the Russian children's library. They let me use the Bible, parallel Russian English, and the children could read the Russian, so they knew what we were talking about. Read the verse in Russian and then read it in English. And my job was to help them pronounce the words correctly. They need a native speaker. But all the false propaganda, it just breaks my heart. I wonder what the future holds. And this thing about, if you look at Islam, it says to kill, murder the unbeliever once you have enough power. And they've been doing that ever since Muhammad, their perfect example, set that example. Read the Quran, read Surah 9. Look what I'd had Muslim friends, but that doesn't change when you're indoctrinating children to believe this stuff. It's a crime against humanity. I don't think any children should be indoctrinated. Yes, exposed. But I've got a friend, I call him the Bible banger. Unless you interpret the verses the way he was taught to interpret it, you're blah, 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 blah. I was fortunate. I had a father, read the Bible, but the understanding of it was you'd have to figure it out for yourself. And we had time working together, raising animals and hunting and fishing and trapping, and a lot of learning by doing rather than indoctrination. So, but please understand, if you study history, the human beings, mothers have been infanticide, killing their babies historically. The great apes don't. Many of them nurse their young until the second molars, equivalent to like 6 years old. Why do humans do it? That's a simple thing, the logical speech. We have logic, and we associate the baby with the sexual activity. And there's a genetic resentment against the dominating male for all the millions of years of rape. So women have a resentment of men. Men have resentment of the dominating men. That's where you get the politics of anarchy. Working together, don't want anybody to have power, but then you got to have something, so everybody will own everything, and we'll have communism. But it has a genetic foundation. The logical speech helped humans to associate the baby that came 6-9 months later with the rape and the genetic resentment of the rape. But there's also the natural problem. You can find it anywhere. Young women are attracted to the invader, and that's genetic also. And young women like to dance around showing themselves. And that's genetic also, not because they're necessarily interested in lust. That's the behavior that got pregnancy. And what gets pregnancy makes the genetics of the future. It's a simple no-brainer. At any rate, let's get on with what's going on here in Kenmore. Before I get to the June 2017 homosexual celebration here in Kenmore, I'm going back to 2012 where where the information that's background for this. And I had put this together in 2012 in frustration over daycare where the children couldn't see out. To me, it's a crime against humanity. But I put together because of one of the speakers in that seminar had specifically talked about the old police station in Kenmore that was converted into daycare, and the windows were so high the children couldn't see out. As I say, I think it's a crime against humanity, and it's going on, and even have now you can put your children in daycare, I guess as young as 2 weeks. Some are, I don't know. At least the one place here advertises 6 weeks. And they have a building you can't see out of. But that's background, and I put together some things from the seminar that are relevant to today in the homosexual celebration. So we're going to go back for a bit to the 2012 material that I put together from the Needs of Children seminar. I'm going to show you 4 pictures of the daycare on Military Road in Kenmore that I took in 2012. You can see the children are being admitted as young as 6 weeks, and they're put in a place where they can't even get to see the outside. To me, it's just a terrible thing, but let's get on with the background more relevant to homosexual development.
July 18th, 2012. As background for other work, I'm going back to a seminar that was organized in 1980 on the needs of children. I was greatly concerned for the needs of children. I had 3 children that were taken from me when they were by divorce when they were 7, 8, and 9, and it grieved my soul. But one of the activities that I did with my care for children, of course I was a teacher, and that was a real joy to teach physics by discovery. The children were the most valuable part of my life. But I was active in the Unitarian Universalist Church, had organized some things and became chairman of adult education and organized some things there. One of them, with the help of 2 others, was the seminar on the needs of children. And here's a brochure that shows the cover for that, the needs of children. And here is the mailer. The address would go here, and this is the cover of the mailer. Needs of Children Seminar, UU Church, 79 and 80. Landmark Adult Education Program, beginning the week of February 3rd, 1980. All are welcome. This is a summary of the schedule. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. The organizing committee: Donald Johnson, chairperson, Linda D. Hummel, and Nancy L. Watkins. This is the registration form that people would send in. Here is a summary of each week and each provider. Donald Thomas, MD, He was Commissioner of Health. And here, David Donaferio, PhD. He was a clinical psychologist from the Western New York Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Clinic. Lee Clendeming. He was a minister working as a social worker for the county of Erie, and overseeing daycare development. Here, learning and emotion and teacher or parent behaviors. J. Ronald Gentile, Professor of Psychology at SUNY AB. March 2nd, Psychosocial Aspects of Chronic Disease of Children and Family. Michelle and Alexander, PhD Professor of Pediatrics at SUNY AB. Bruno Schuttkecker. He was a psychiatrist, held many posts, and was a personal friend, but hard to understand when he was working as a psychiatrist at the Buffalo VA. He ordered the only lobotomy done at that institute. Here, child justice system observed. Friedrich Keller, UBT TV stage radio film producer. March 23rd, Child Abuse, Physical and Sexual, A Legal View. Linda Cleveland. She was an attorney in private practice and a personal friend. Thank you. And then Bruno Schuttkecker, he was a member of the congregation. He had been in charge of the Buffalo Psychiatric Center, and he had been in charge of psychiatry at the Buffalo VA, and was held in contempt by many because he had ordered a lobotomy, the only lobotomy performed at the Buffalo Veterans Hospital. But he's gone now, but it always struck me as strange because Bruno liked to speak to people, liked to get up in front of an audience, and he had many things to offer. I've been to his home, enjoyed fellowship in different groups that he was part of. And when I was made chairman of adult education, the different things that I sponsored, Bruno was always very glad to take part, and he had much to offer. That's the discussion of what I recall 32 years later and what made an impression on me. And as I said, my purpose in going and putting this together is background for a problem of child abuse, one that I believe is a crime against humanity. So look for that next video, and this will be cited in the background of that. I just realized I left out one of the most important foundation characterization of human growth and development that was part of this seminar. It was presented by Dr. Bruno Schuttkecker, the psychiatrist, and it was him telling about New York University pre-med background on stages of human growth and development, which a healthy developmental process would take one through. The first level was narcissistic. The first level of human affection is self. And this is for the infant being born. It's the narcissistic. All it's really aware of is itself. And I always say, nice, colorful comment about that, and I'll save that till later. But the next level of development in a healthy child is to care about others like self. Boys are generally attracted to boys. In very early childhood, there may not be differentiation between boys and girls. Little babies, once they've developed to the point of awareness of others, like other little babies, like self. When the differentiation of walking and talking comes, and you begin to find boys prefer to play with boys and girls prefer to play with girls. This is called homoerotic, the second stage of human affection. And the third stage, usually triggered somewhere around puberty, is attraction to the opposite sex. That is heteroerotic. And Bruno pointed out that these three levels are all meeting some personal need. They are not giving necessarily to others, but satisfying a need of self, in self. But then a couple gets married, and if they have a healthy enough foundation, they their relationship bears child, and it's the first unselfish level of love. This I refer to as you take and feed the baby and care for it, and all it does is turn the food into a diaper change, and you still care for it and feed it. And these were the four levels that Bruno was taught in pre-med. Now, the development on this, I realized and carried it further, that when I was in New York City at 17, coming through in the Air Force, and walked underneath an tall apartment building, and here's trash and condoms on the sidewalk, and I had been on the road selling magazines, and I learned that apartment dwellers cared much less for their environment. And in the low rent projects, you could hardly stand the smell in the hallways where the people would pee and sometimes poop. But in a private residential area where there was ownership, there was much more care. And working with this, I thought about my own children and how I cared. I had bought a private home, this home right here, in the mid-1960s. and how much I cared about the keeping the lawn up and fixing the house and having a nice home, and caring about the community. And then the children went down the street to an elementary school. I had concern for the quality of the schools. And then they went off to a wading pool in the summer, and I cared about the quality of the parks and pools and so forth. And then I realized that's a natural stage of development. Care for the home and children, to growing to care for the community. And then I realized as the children went off to the world of work and war or university, there was a concern for the quality of government and military, that another level of development for the world of work and war. And then as I've gotten older, understanding that it's a global community, and caring about all. You can't just have one segment. My major concern now is realizing that indoctrination of children deprives them of common sense and intuition. They're confused, whether they're memorizing the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah. They're being turned into robots. They have the choice of rebelling or complying. But the socialist revolution was largely led by rebellious Jews, but they had been brought up memorizing and rebelling against their memorization, but they didn't have common sense. And the whole thing today of children being raised in apartments and in intellectual book learning and indoctrinated in this way without natural experience of that a farm child would get, raising animals and working together with the family and the close family ties. The common sense and intuition is a thing of the past for many children, and the care that they get in daycare doesn't give them a sufficient foundation for development. We now know that nerve growth factor is present at certain ages, like at 6 months old, the brain scan can show autism is going to happen because there was not the mammalian nursing bond. An animal level bond didn't happen when nerve growth factor was present in that area of the brain, and that brain area will not develop. And that's just part of the reality. It doesn't mean the person will be a bad person or an immoral person. They'll just be missing parts on the mammalian level of development. But, so Bruno Schuttkecker, this is an addition for that. Much foundation built on these things that will be referred to. This background will be referred to in later videos. Thank you.
This is the Kenmore Public Library celebrating Homosexual Month. Well, in Russia, the Veterans Administration healthcare system couldn't tell me that my eye operation had been postponed, but they repeatedly emailed me inviting me to help the Veterans healthcare system celebrate homosexuality. I took this little video through the outside window of the library. Across the street is the junior high school that I attended. 2 years ago, my neighbor removed their daughter from the school and put her in St. John's Catholic School when the homosexual lesbian principal had so inspired the young women that they were openly engaging each other during their free time on the front lawn. Meantime, Russia is being punished for their law not propagandizing homosexuality to children.
Russia didn't respond immediately to Kiev's latest accusations, but said it still supported a ceasefire deal. But Friday's funerals for 2 teenagers killed in Donetsk only strengthen a feeling that the Minsk Accord is increasingly in tatters. The boy's teacher blamed the Ukrainian government. Ukraine isn't killing dogs, it's killing people, she cried. Why is everybody silent? Why do our children have to die, leaving us to pray? The school football pitch where a mortar shell killed Andrei Elisev and Daniil Kuznetsov isn't far from rebel positions which have often come under government fire. Kiev denies responsibility, blaming planned provocation by separatists.
I don't know what this world is coming to, but Russia is being punished for a law against propagandizing homosexuality to children. And that was the reason that Obama funded the overthrow of the elected government in Ukraine and has put out so much false propaganda. And here the Russian-speaking Russians part of Ukraine. Ukraine historically was Russia. They moved the capital from Kiev to Moscow because of the invasions of Poles, Lithuanians, and Germans. But the western part of Ukraine joined Hitler, and this is the part that Obama supported to overthrow the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, where they're murdering children, bombing schools and homes with U.S. funds. I don't know what this world is coming to. Before I end this, let me share with you my born-again cultural foundation, my operational definition of God. God is everything, infinite and eternal, matter, space, and motion, not created and not destroyed. In Him we live and move and have our being. God is the source of all things. We're made out of His dirt. We're like a cell in God's body. We can be a good one or a bad one. Good and bad depends on the fruit we bear for the future. I have a great deal of respect for Abram. His father, they say, made idols that women would sacrificed their unwanted babies to. And Abraham was the archetype for not sacrificing your child. He took his son and was going to kill him, but he took instead an animal and stopped human sacrifice of children, infanticide. He stopped it. And that was the special people that set them aside. They people that did not kill their babies. And so they ended up in Egypt, where Pharaoh would say, kill this one or kill that one. And when they left Egypt, Moses, their leader, gave them the 10 Commandments, which are very much like the things from the Book of the Dead. I have not murdered, I have not lied, I have not. And in them, from our source of existence, these laws say it's murder for Pharaoh to order the killing of innocent people. And even kings and pharaohs are subject to these laws and have to respect life. And then these laws of respecting people, not lying, not stealing, and all that, there was a priesthood set up to educate people, but they made themselves the big Umpty Ump, and it came between that for you to talk to your source of existence or have a relationship. I would so enjoyed squirrel hunting with my father. We'd go out there and sit in the woods. It's so peaceful being alone with God. And the little chipmunks would even after a while come out and be running almost over your feet. And of course, so we were out there to get food for supper. So then a squirrel would come out and we'd shoot it. But that peace and thankfulness for existing, and thankful to my source of existence, which I call God. And here's Abraham. He stopped the child sacrifice. And here is Moses, who the laws of being honest with people and not murdering, even kings and pharaohs were subject and would be executed if they violated the murdering. But the priests took over and made themselves in between us and our source of existence. And then come Jesus, who had a personal relationship, the firstborn son of this source of existence, spiritually, the firstborn in a physical body. He had a personal relationship. And even though the priests didn't respect him, he went directly to talk to God, his source of existence. So the priests had him murdered. And he said, this generation won't pass before I return. Well, spiritually, outlook, Christ's outlook. They have the day of Pentecost where they received Christ's Spirit and this relationship with their source of existence and the joy of the meaning of life and fellowship in this existence and being part of it and having some communication. I don't know about magic communication, but they did have, talking about prayer, they did have an experiment with when the Russians were putting up the first astronauts. What if the power failed? Could we use mental telepathy to communicate? And they did some experiments. One of them was a mother rabbit in Moscow or St. Petersburg, wherever, and with the electrodes to the brain and her litter out in a submarine sailing around the oceans. And when they sacrificed one of her litter, wherever it was, they could tell by the instruments attached to the mother rabbit's head that somehow there was communication there. There's many things we haven't discovered yet, but we are discovering. And I like what Jesus said, it's better I go away. I will send you the Spirit of truth, the outlook of truth, that will teach you all things and bring into remembrance the things that I've said. And I like what Paul said about those people who profess science, so-called science. That's what's going on, so-called science. There's so much hokum with probability and relativity and imaginary realities that we're getting there. We're getting there. I could show you Einstein's error in putting mass on the wrong side of the equation, and I've published that. But these things will come to bear, and just like the moon striking the earth, it's a no-brainer, but you can't tell people who don't have a brain. What's the Coriolis effect building the Alps and the Caucasus. But why do you think we have dinosaur bones in Antarctica? Because it was pushed there when the moon struck the earth. But that's enough to turn you off. I'm just thankful for Jesus. And I believe the meaning of life is in fellowship. And I hope that you find some good fellowship with people that are able to care, that have had the care, that are able to care. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And I don't believe in this preaching fear. People who submit out of fear do not have a caring security. The love of God, the love of our source of existence. And let's get together with all those people trying to save the whales and against beating up all them little seals to get their fur and make it a nicer world. I just enjoy so much when I see these wild animals, or you find a wild cat caring for a baby monkey. It killed its mother, and then it found the baby, and it felt sorry for it. There's a lot of good things in this world. May the Lord be with you.
This is the ending message. This is the website, The Way, the Truth, and the Life. These are the guest rooms in our 3 homes, New York, Florida, and Russia. They are prepared for those messengers that Jesus prayed for in Luke chapter 10. And he gave them the instructions. Reading from Luke chapter 10, verse 1. After these things the Lord appointed 70 other also, and sent them 2 by 2 before his face into every city and place whither he himself would come. As Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am with them. Verse 2, therefore he said unto them, the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth laborers into the harvest. This is Jesus praying for more servants and asking us to do the same. Verse 3, go your ways. Behold, I send you forth as lambs among wolves. Verse 4, carry neither purse nor scrip nor shoes, and salute no man on the way. Verse 5, and into whatsoever house ye enter, first say, peace be to this house. Verse 6, and if the Son of Peace be there, your peace shall rest upon it. If not, it shall return unto you again. Verse 7, and in the same house remain, eating and drinking such things as they give, for the laborer is worthy of his hire. Go not from house to house. Verse 8, and into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you, eat such things as they set before you. Verse 9, and heal the sick that are therein, and say to them, the kingdom of God has come nigh unto you. Verse 10, but into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you not, go your way out into the streets of the same, and say, verse 11, even the very dust of your city, which cleaves on us, we wipe off against you. Notwithstanding, be ye sure of this, that the kingdom of God has come nigh unto you. Verse 12, but I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable in that day for Sodom than for that city. In closing, remember Matthew 18, verse 20, where Jesus said, for where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them.